Good evening. I'm Jessica Nelson. We'll get started in about 10 minutes.
Jessica, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
My microphone's okay, sound check okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Very well.
Great.
I want to see, I can see the share screen. Um, if, do you know if it's possible to do this in presenter mode?
Yes. You just
Well,
have,
okay,
do you
let
have a
me,
dual
let
screen?
me, no, how do I create a dual screen? Oh, no, I'm on a laptop in a hotel. I don't have a second monitor.
Okay. I don't think you can do it without the second monitor, but if you send it to me, if you email it to me, I can control it and you can have your presenter. Oh, you're muted.
No, I don't think so. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Um, yes, I'll send it to you. Um, so I'll just tell you when the next slide is on.
That sounds good.
Okay. Um, let's see, I'm ready whenever you are. What do we need to do? Oops, now I can't hear you.
Did you send it to me through email?
Yeah, I did. I sent it to, it would have gone, I think I sent it. Let's see. I sent a link at 6:24, but wait a minute. I thought I did. Oh, there's an attachment as well.
Okay, I just haven't gotten it yet.
Well, what I also can do is I can have two versions of it up.
Or you can put the link in the chat here on the side of Life Size.
Okay, let me do that as well. I'm going to give it to you in a PDF format, if that's okay.
That's perfectly fine.
Okay, send.
Got it. Okay, I'll get ready to go ahead and introduce you. Good evening. Welcome back to Tech Jackson if you tuned in earlier today. If you haven't, welcome to Tech Jackson. This is Tech Jackson 2020. Initially supposed to have gone on in April of this year, but COVID set us back a little bit. So now we're doing it virtually. So tonight we have for you Richard Sun, who's the founder of Mississippi Coding Academy and Mississippi CodeWorks, a newer venture. Richard Sun has focused on startup and high-growth companies as a private equity investor, advisor, board member, and executive. He has played a key role in 9 startup companies, has invested $230 million in 4 early-stage companies for institutional private equity investors, and personally invested in 13 others. He was named Angel Investor of the Year in 2006 by New Vantage Active Angel Investors. Mr. Sun was an investment banker specializing in private finance with Goldman Sachs, the First Boston Corporation, now Credit Suisse, his own firm, and UBS from 1976 to 1994. At UBS, he founded and ran a project finance advisory and private equity group. He started his business career with Bankers Trust Company, now part of Deutsche Bank, as an international corporate banker. Since 1980, He has originated, structured, placed, and negotiated over 70 private financial transactions valued at over $4 billion and led over 30 advisory assignments valued at over $7 billion, including private equity, debt, and tax-oriented investments, venture capital, workouts and bankruptcies, mergers, project finance, and leasing. Mr. Sun earned an MBA in Finance and International Business from NYU, elected to Beta Gamma Sigma, and a BA from Princeton University in Politics, magna cum laude. He was also awarded a Chartered Financial Analyst Charter in 2006. He's a volunteer pilot with Angel Flight, Homeland Security Emergency Air Transport System, and Veterans Airlift Command. He is also a volunteer with the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary Aviation Unit. Please welcome Mr. Richard Sun.
Thank you all. I actually kiddingly say that I have two resumes or two ways of introducing myself, one that makes me sound like a human and the other that makes people run screaming from the room in horror or worry that I might be contagious. And unfortunately, that's almost that resume. I love it. It's accurate. But Jessica, laugh. I'm just kidding. Thank you for the opportunity to talk here. The Coding Academy team is, and Jessica and I are working to get the slide coordinated so I can, so I appreciate her help on this one. We've been working with the Coding Academy for 3 years now. We've graduated about 80 coders, and this summer I decided to see if what we were doing here in Jackson with the Coding Academies resonated at the national level, and I'm happy to say that it does. We, in the educational technology community, which is where venture capitalists are looking at new things that they can finance in educational technology, we're playing this what we're doing in Jackson with what we call the Mississippi model now for training software developers is getting a lot of attention. And that's something of a challenge because there are a lot of people teaching coding in a lot of different ways. We seem to have found one that's unique. Amazon, Apple, Comcast have all visited our facilities and praised us. 2 of us have funded us. 1 wants to partner with us for workforce development. If we can bring that second slide to the top now, the one that says full stack certified coders. There's been a shortage of coders for 50 years. I actually learned coding in the late 60s, early 70s. There was a shortage of coders then, it's continued. We have not figured out a way to train coders. Usually a college degree is required, but that's usually the HR department. When you go down to the startup companies, they don't need a college degree, they just need to learn how to code. This spring, we were graduating about 25 new coders, and in the middle of March, when the lockdowns went into effect, we realized that people weren't going to be hiring. I've been through enough of these crises to know that they're all different, but certain characteristics are very predictable. One of them was that people weren't going to hire. So we responded, if we could have the next slide up, please, by adapting our model. If we could bring that slide that says the Academy's train, good, thank you. And I'm not sure if all of you can see the detail on the screen here, but what we did is we created Mississippi CodeWorks. It is a for-profit subsidiary wholly owned by the Coding Academies. The Coding Academies all own and have a right to all of the profits of CodeWorks. So the Coding Academies are an 11-month simulated workplace where underserved recent high school grads become full-stack entry-level coders guided by senior industry developers. It's nonprofit, it's free to the coders. We're very fortunate. We don't have the institutional constraints of a school or a college. We're free from those constraints. What CodeWorks will do will become a place where our coders can work part-time or full-time and in lieu of going into a big company. We will become a minority-majority software development company. our coders, by the way, are 70% African American, 30% female. And they will be the base, the coders with which we are starting Mississippi CodeWorks. These are our results to date. If we could flip to the next slide. We've graduated 80 coders. We have a 75% completion rate, a 90% placement rate, and typically the income of our coders goes from the minimum wage level of maybe $10,000 to $12,000 a year to $35,000 to $45,000 a year to start. 3 to 5 years out, they should be making $75,000 or more. A quarter of them or a third of them could easily be in the 100,000 plus category. On the right are our plans for CodeWorks. We're going to be producing 200 coders a year out of Jackson. We're graduating 25 at the moment, 200 in 3 to 5 years. We will have a coding company that is generating 35 to 50 million in revenue and adding about as much to the local economy. We plan to make Jackson and Mississippi a place where the tech companies outsource their coding work. Instead of sending it to Asia or Eastern Europe, send it to Mississippi. We can do it just as well as they can. It's kind of interesting when on the screen talking to one of these startup specialists who is from Pakistan, and you're telling him, hey, we can create coders in Mississippi, and you're sort of making the point. He looks at you and says, Rich, I get it. We do it in Pakistan. You can do it here. The business that CodeWorks has been developing, we are, for instance, and have been for several months, doing the coding work for the Eudora Welty research website. Millsap professor asked us to start that. Kellogg has funded us with money so that we can work with Visit Jackson, so our coders can develop websites and modify websites for local small businesses, the mom and pop stores, give them, or restaurants, give them takeout menus so that they can adapt to COVID-19. We're getting a lot of business for CodeWorks, coding development work, unsolicited. So I have no doubt that we will be able to attract the business we need to. We could flip one slide. This is a picture of the Eudora Welty website. And if we could go to another slide, the next slide. We've found serendipitously that our young coders, like 18, 19, 20, early 20s, who've just learned coding, are superb for teaching people 3 to 5 years behind them, people in the high school, coding. And for instance, this is, we're working with the Jackson Medical Mall, the Young Futurists Project. We started this summer's teaching virtual coding classes. And so that's one of the things we're doing out of CodeWorks. Next slide. Here's our secret. Every business has what they call, in the tech world, it's secret sauce. This is our secret sauce. Our instructors are all industry qualified instructors. Bryce ran a local development team for an advertising firm. Javier was teaching coding in schools. Andrew Stamps is a PhD candidate up in at Mississippi State. He is the senior instructor in our Starkville location. And then Herbert Brown is at Jackson. And this is a typical class from Jackson. This is most of the 2020 cohort. If you could go to the next slide then, please. This is our board. We've just added Nashley and Glenn McCullough. Mike Forster and I were along with Joe Donovan, were really the people that founded this organization. And Sarah Lee joined us shortly thereafter and she's my equivalent up in Starkville. I run the Jackson location. She takes care of the Starkville one. Although, candidly, my instructors run it. I just try and make sure they're adequately funded and stay out of trouble. And we couldn't be happier to have Nashley and Glenn joining our board. I'm looking forward to hearing the description about the tech center from Nashley, because we're hoping to move the coding academy over there when it's complete. If we could go to the next slide. This is what we're doing at the moment. We're looking for business partners. We need senior software developers and what they're called dev team leaders to complement our junior coders. And then we'll turn on the marketing machine to get software, web, and app development. Now, what does the future hold? We called the technique that we developed at the Coding Academy the Mississippi model. When the major tech companies were telling us they'd never seen coding taught like this, we decided that we'd like to, we sort of branded it the Mississippi model. But we're now adding some features to it so that we're going to start calling it the enhanced Mississippi model. We're going to add a professionally run front-end boot camp of 10 weeks. And then while the coders have graduated and they're working for CodeWorks for pay, we're going to continue their professional education. We're going to work with probably Amazon, but also IBM on cloud training and certification. So over the year or two after they graduate from the Coding Academy and are working at CodeWorks, or if they're working at any other company, we will have a program where they can continue their professional education and go through the training and badging certification that Amazon has that creates senior software engineers. Those are jobs that pay 125 to 170 grand a year. They can pay that amount or very close to it in Mississippi. By the way, there are coders in Mississippi without college degrees, self-taught in coding, that are earning over 400 grand a year. So that's not as outrageous as it sounds. We are creating in that entire system, from the boot camp to the Coding Academy to CodeWorks to the professional education, the only organization I've seen, the only ecosystem where somebody that wants to learn software can go from the very first line of code that they write, which is hello world typically, it's a tradition, to a senior cloud engineer and stay in the same system. You know, normally you learn some coding in high school, maybe you can get a coding degree, computer science degree, and then you go learn how to be a senior engineer. But you're doing it at different locations, and a lot of coders, probably 3/4 of them, are self-taught. They just piece their own program together. This will be, when we fully develop it, the first place we're aware of where you can literally go your first line of code to a professionally certified Amazon cloud engineer and stay in the same organization. In the process, we will add the ability to do cloud software work at CodeWorks. Right now, the cloud is 10%. 10% of businesses are on the cloud. In a few years, 50 will be on the cloud. We've done some research. There are very few companies in Mississippi and very few individuals in Mississippi certified by Amazon to do that work. My intent is to make Mississippi CodeWorks the preeminent cloud software company in Mississippi. And if we aren't, I'll be glad to see other companies that are doing that work. So that, I mean, it's so much better for Mississippi if we have a whole bunch of companies doing that work, and we have our own little mini, by Silicon Valley standards, coding center. So there's a very good chance that what we are doing in Mississippi will help with people like Vince and Nashley build a tech center in Mississippi. And by the way, I got to thank the mayor for what he's done. He's taken some steps that have made this a lot more readily achievable. It's quite impressive. I also want to congratulate Jessica for going through our program in the evening. We have, in addition to our daytime program, which I described, Comcast funded us in the evening for a program for working professionals, and Jessica's a proud graduate. We're proud to have her of that program. So that's pretty much it. And I hope I left some time for questions. I tend to run long on these things. Actually, there's two more slides that I forgot to queue up. If we could, that I've talked to this, and the next one is questions. There's another slide that we can put up. What you probably can't see here is this is actually CFAS addressing our coding academy. That was a really big event because they could see somebody that came from Jackson and went to the very pinnacle of software engineering and startup achievement. So that, you know, that was really big. So questions?
Now we'll open it up to audience questions. Any questions for Mr. Sun about the Coding Academy or CodeWorks or getting into coding, or if you are into coding, how you can help with his projects and his companies to grow in Jackson and in Mississippi, or about his trajectory and how he got to where he is? Don't be shy. Okay, we got one. What is your favorite thing about coding?
I think it's a well, there's a number of things. I taught myself coding. Like many people, I was introduced to it in a brief way, and then I was so fascinated by it that I just self-taught myself to be a Fortran programmer. It's solving puzzles, but it's the interesting thing about it is you maybe do some exercises to solve a problem of no consequence, but it's fun to just learn how to code. But coding can solve some very significant problems that we have. A lot of the energy efficiency will come as a result of coding. One thing I like about coding, and this is a little bit abstract, we literally, the ability of coding to enable somebody that is in a minimum wage job and doesn't see an obvious future to put in 11 months of work, hard mental work, but very doable work, and come out at the other end as an entry-level tech professional, making what they, 35 to 50 grand, and if they stay with it, be on a career. That's the power to me of coding. It enables somebody that's ambitious to put in the work and have a positive result. Now, we all know that while the computer itself isn't biased, some of the ways that it can be programmed can introduce bias, and the companies that run coding are their own unique culture, which we won't get into. But one of the neat things coming out of the Coding Academy is that by creating CodeWorks, we will be creating a company that is minority majority. We are creating a culture from scratch. As we stand it up, as we bring in our graduate coders, they will be the culture. They will create the culture. When I started CodeWorks at the beginning, I was perfectly unqualified. In that resume, you've noticed that there was nothing about technology, there was nothing about education, and what kind of slips through the cracks is I'd never run a group of people larger than 5. So I had to do all of those 3 things passably well to make the coding academies work. But the ability to create our own company and friendly to the graduates, that is enabled by coding. So that to me is one of the powers of coding. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. How long does it take to learn coding?
Well, you can write your first program the day you sit down to learn coding. Typically it's hello world. You do a print command, hello world. It is a continuous, there's no single answer to that question because it's a continuous learning process. There's always something new to learn. You can always enhance your skills. It is a job at which you probably won't be bored because it changes continuously. One of the things we do is we teach our coders to teach themselves. They're in a profession, entering a profession where their specific knowledge of particular coding language lasts maybe 3 to 5 years. They need to learn the next replacement language. So that process is such that we teach people the principles and we teach them a coding language, but we expect they will keep teaching themselves going forward. There are very few jobs where you have to keep learning at the rate that you learn in coding. Now, if you like learning, that's a great thing because it's very satisfying. If you just want to learn something and do it over and over again, like a production line worker, coding may not be something you'll enjoy.
Great response. What's your advice for those who want to get started in coding, aside from seek out to becoming?
Come to our website, fill out an application. But you can also, there's a lot of resources on the web. I happen to have Apple computers. So Apple has a great program for introductory coding. I'm a little bit biased, but I say it's the best first language for people that have access to an Apple computer. You just go to Xcode, just go to the App Store and download Xcode, and go to the bookstore and download Everyone Can Learn to Code. And I think it's a 90-hour or 180-hour program. You can learn how to program every Apple device. It'll be basic. It won't be advanced coding. You can learn to make a really mature senior coder is probably 7 years, but in several months, we can teach you to do enough to be employable doing, say, front-end work, which is what you see on the front-end coding is anything you see on the screens or here on your microphones. It's websites, apps, it's browsers, etc. Back end is what goes on in the cloud or on the server or inside the computer. So you can, that's why the fact that you can become a viable coder earning money after 3 to 5 months, but you can stay at it for 7 years before you reach the peak. That's why I stumbled on how long does it take to become a coder.
So Deshay asked, I think we should have coding classes in all schools. How long will it take to get to all the schools, and how can we go about it?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm not an educator. There are some things I am and can do, and running an educational system or figuring out how to help something disseminate through an educational system is not something I really know how to do. But I will say this. One of the constraints on teaching coding is teaching the teachers to teach coding. Coding is very intimidating. It's really pretty basic when you get to know it, but it's, some people say I don't do math, they're intimidated by math, when really if they tried, they could. Coding's like that, except it's maybe a little more intimidating. But to teach it, you need to get the teachers comfortable with it so they can teach it. I think one way to accelerate it is to have people that are young coders that have just learned how to code, like our coders, go in and teach coding under the supervision of a qualified teacher, or maybe in an after-school program. There's some things so that would allow us to get a large number of people that know coding into the schools. After-school coding clubs, if they can be done, are a great way to get it to people that want to play with computers and coding. There is a theory that coding and familiarity with computers is the third literacy, in addition to reading and writing and numerical and logical skills. There is something to that. So there's something to be said for everybody that graduates from high school to have a familiarity at some level with coding, at least so they understand how it works, so it's not a black box. I think it's just time, money, and dedication. The state government, I know, is looking at it, but there's obviously it's going to require some money. It's going to require some people doing things they're not comfortable doing, and it's going to require some creativity. But we are of the opinion that coding should be taught everywhere that it can be taught well, and that's K through 12, community colleges, four-year colleges, and then at places like the Coding Academy. So that people will learn coding in a lot of different ways. So we should have a lot of different places and ways for them to learn it.
Excellent. What kind of background does it take to become a coder? Are there certain skills that you need to enter the Coding Academy?
It doesn't require a rocket scientist. It doesn't require a math wizard. It doesn't require anybody that has any coding knowledge before. We think that we can teach pretty much everybody to code. Now, whether they will enjoy coding, that's a different question. But that's not whether you like coding and want to do coding is not a function of how good you are at math or how educated you are. The washout rate for computer science at Harvard and Stanford isn't any lower than it is at the Coding Academy. We get about 75% of our people through. Anyone can learn to code. What makes it easier is if you like solving puzzles, if you're not frustrated when you run into a challenge, because you will run into challenges, and you may solve them by thinking your way through them, asking a friend, going onto the web and finding out how somebody else has done it. It's really just hard work and the ability to think logically, and pretty much anybody can do that. Our graduates were 40% of the people hired into the IT department at Mississippi Emergency Management. One of the four was hired as a coder. The other three were hired as a result of critical thinking skills that they developed at the academy. As you learn code, you learn to think very logically. You learn to think very methodically and procedurally. And that's a skill that's useful beyond coding. A lot of people who become entry-level coders will not make a career out of coding, but coding will enable the career they have. They might go into customer support, they might go into management, they might go into software sales, they might go into IT. There's a lot of jobs that are very high paying and very professionally satisfying that having a knowledge of how a code works is very helpful. Oh, by the way, I'll tell you that when I sat down to take the test we give our coders, having been a coder, having done research level coding in Fortran, having done commercial grade programming for Computer Science Corporation, I got stumped by the first question. So it could be a challenge at all levels. By the way, that doesn't make it hard. It's just I was thinking about the problem in the wrong way.
Absolutely.
Let me add, if you think about the bad websites you've been at, the ones that are counterintuitive and they look ugly, they were probably done by a computer scientist. the best websites that you've seen, the most intuitive apps, they were done probably by a liberal arts graduate or somebody with an artistic sense, graphic design sense, and a good ability to write and convey thoughts. In other words, 80, probably 3/4 of the people we need doing coding and doing apps and doing websites, particularly the front end work, are liberal arts graduates and people that are trained in the liberal arts. Because what are the three things you need to do? Have a website? You need the content, the written material, the visual imagery, a good sense of graphic design, and oh yeah, you have to make it work on the computer. Well, basically what that means is most of the skills are liberal arts skills, not computer science skills. And think about the difference between the Apple products designed by a fellow who was more of a artist, Steve Jobs, than the work that was done by Bill Gates, who was more of a computer geek.
Definitely, definitely. We have another question. Are there any schools that you would recommend over others that you know? Aside from Princeton, of course.
Yeah, there is no competition. Yeah. Well, it depends on what you're looking for. There are schools that are don't be confused by reputation. Think about what you want to achieve, what your resources are, what they will teach. I'll tell you this: there's only one thing. In the end, what will matter is your ability to be a lifelong learner. Whatever it is, whatever school sets you on that track is the school to go to, the one that helps you get to that track. I remember only one question that I was asked on all 4 years of final exams at Princeton. And it's more of a quirky thing than meaningful knowledge. But what I did learn, a lot of people have what I think of as a transformational experience. That was the first time. It could be a prep school they went to, it could be a college they went to, it could be a grad school that they went to, or it could be, I hope, Mississippi Coding Academies for the people that go through our track. And it's that first time that you see that there's a really broad world out there, that there's so many things that you can learn, so much you can achieve if you just focus on that. Well, the good thing about the web is it's given us access to the great bank of knowledge anywhere in the world. There, visual images from the Smithsonian, the great research libraries, all of that is now available to you if you know where to look and you want to listen to it. The bad thing about the internet is giving us a lot of trashy stuff. And unfortunately, that trashy stuff is very addictive. It's like sugar and fat. We're just not, So use the web to find, force yourself to find the great stuff on the web. When I was at college, paying what seemed like a lot of money in tuition then, or at least my parents were paying it, one of the professors sort of irritated me. He said, look, in the end, a great university is just a library and a reading list. And in a way, he was probably right to some extent. But what that means is, with the right reading list, you've got in the internet the library. So one of the things I do is I force myself not to watch mainstream television. I've sworn off all the cable news channels, and I try to go focus on quality content, the stuff that has real meaning. And anybody can do that. You just have to force yourself to do it. It takes a little self-discipline. But in terms of finding out which school to go to, I don't know who asked that question. I don't know what their situation now is and what their objectives are. I would say talk to a lot of people that you think might be helpful. People love answering questions like that. Be careful, you'll get contradictory advice. And only you have to live your life. So they can give good advice. It might be good advice for them, but not good advice for you.
Yes, definitely. Um, could they learn coding at home?
Yeah, our first instructor hadnn't seen a class inside of a classroom since second grade. He was homeschooled, taught it himself. There's a group of coders, maybe 3, 5%, a minority, that simply teach themselves coding. They find a computer, they find the on switch, and the rest is history. We have a fellow here, Nader Dabbit. At 31, he was selling mattresses for his father on Route 31. At 37, he was a senior Amazon engineer. They were paying him hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. We speculate about how much that might be. And he's all entirely self-taught, and I haven't seen a college degree on his resume. Um, Anyone can do that if they catch the bug. One of the things I ask my instructors is every year is what percentage of our class have the potential to be Nader Dabbit class coders to reach that level from the Bay, Mississippi. And pretty consistently, I get back the answer about a quarter to a third, which means we're producing 5 to 7 people a year that can hit that level. And yes, you can learn it on your at home. All you need is a computer, an internet connection. There's a tremendous amount of content out there that allows you to learn. And in fact, one of the things that we teach our coders is how to use the internet and resources that are out there on the web to do their coding. One of the first things you do as a coder is set up your own GitHub account, GitHub. That's a place where coders post their code, and you can take that code down off the web and incorporate it into your program. I mean, if you're writing a program that needs a password, uh, a sign on, a login, do you need to write that from scratch, or just why not get it from an open source and plug that in and go write the creative part of your program? A lot of programming is plagiarism, legal plagiarism, where you take blocks of code that other people have written, put it down, bring it into your program, tie it all together so that it works, and you go from there. So yeah, you absolutely can learn it yourself. I taught myself. I had one 5-day, maybe 10 hours of instruction in Fortran, and the rest I taught myself. And I used it to write my senior thesis, and that was published in a top academic journal. It was predicting election returns, and for 40 years that was quoted in NPR and the Washington or the New York Times. So yeah, you can teach yourself.
What made you want to get into coding? Was it that senior thesis?
No, actually, the senior thesis was a result of it was enabled by coding. I had a summer job at a research engineering firm. They gave a seminar on Fortran coding to the engineers. I sat in, came back to Princeton, had access to a computer, and said, I want to learn how to code. And the first thing I did, because okay, you're going to learn to code. What are you going to do with coding? Well, there was a little game called High Q, and it was a little board game where you jumped one piece over another and took pieces off the table, off the board when you jumped over them, and you tried to land with the colored peg in the center hole of the game at the end. And I programmed a solution to that. In computing, by the way, there are two solutions. There's a direct elegant solution, and then there's a brute force solution. I used the brute force solution because I just had the computer run play the game every way it could possibly be played, and kept the one where the peg ended up in the center hole at the end of the game. I did it because it was fascinating, and it was just a puzzle that intrigued me at the time. And I learned what I learned from coding enabled me to get a part-time job at college that meant that I could work in the computer center rather than dormitory and food services, in the kitchen. That's maybe one reason that I learned coding. The other one was that it was a good way to earn money in college. Now, think about this. Somebody comes out of high school, college is very expensive. They come to our place for a year. They come out with a part-time job that pays $25 an hour. That changes the college finance equation. If you got a job that pays 40 to 50 grand a year, part-time, you look at financing college differently. I actually think that if you're so it's a good thing to do before you go to college, maybe in a break here. It's also a great thing to do after you graduate from college. If you come out with a liberal arts degree from a good college, but you haven't done something that gives you economic value, you may be earning 25, 30 grand a year in Mississippi. Add coding onto that right after you graduate, and bang, you're at 35 to 50. And we can get you a job without a college degree, but you really are much better at enjoying life if you learn the things you learn in college and you have a valuable economic skill like coding. I'm a liberal arts graduate. I think the world of liberal arts, but there isn't a great need for philosophers right now. There's a great need for good philosophy, but you're not going to be paid for being a philosopher unless you've got coding skills. Then you can be paid for, well.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten, and what piece of advice would you give to our audience tonight?
Humble about how much you know and how much you think you know and how much the people that are teaching you know, including me. In a couple of years, I'll go back to Princeton for my 50th reunion. When I think about what the world was like in 1972 when I graduated and what the world is like now, most of the predictions did not come true. Most of my expectations did not come true. Fortunately, most of it was on the upside. There will be so much change in the next 50 years that one good piece of advice I would say is be prepared for change, set yourself up so that you thrive and can cope with change. In the military, when you have a really bad experience, when life just sucks, soldiers have a motto: embrace the suck. There's going to be a lot of change. Learn to enjoy it. Learn to thrive on it. There's a lot of people that simply don't like to change. They're threatened by it. They like to do the same thing over and over. The world belongs to the people that enjoy change and adapting to it and thriving on it and seeing these trends as they come along. But I wish I were your age, because I had a mind that thinks naturally about data and the power of modern computers and the amount of data that's available to play with. I mean, if I had the same interest that I had then with the computing power and the access to data, it'd be like a kid in a candy store. My senior thesis involved multiple linear equations and some fairly heavy duty statistics and math, most of which turned out to be wrong. But the modern versions of that are really powerful. And you can just do so much more. Now, any tool can be used for good or evil. And the computing skills that we have and the what we can do with those computing skills, they're like nuclear physics. You can use it to make power out of it. You can use it to cure cancer, or you can blow things up with it. Computing power and skills are like that. The Chinese are using it now to run a state that's more horribly controlling of individuals than George Orwell imagined in his novel 1984. That's the dark side of computing. On the other hand, there's so much good that can come out of computing. You can use it to sequence DNA, and you can use it to predict health problems. I mean, just the list goes on. But be one of the good guys, gals in computing, not one of the folks on the dark side.
Thank you. And any parting words? This has been a great talk. I appreciate it. Very informative. I think that you gave out some great advice and some great answers to the questions. Would you like to leave them with one last word? Not word or words.
Watch us at the academies and come join us on our quest, because I think over 50 years in finance and starting companies, you sometimes get a sense of when you're on to something special, when you've got something that could have a significant impact on the world. I think what we're doing with the coding academies, and it's not me, it's the whole team, because I just give them the tools and turn them loose, maybe give them a little bit of direction. The feedback I'm getting from the national level startup, the best, the top tier people that look at startup companies is so positive. We're getting people volunteering to come help us, be an advisor, give us coding work. It's just something special. So I think we've got something special going on here, and please help us. Well, watch us. Hopefully, be proud of us. We're going to change the way, if we get this right, if we can do what I think we can do, we will change the way people think about Mississippi. You know, I call this the Mississippi model because I wanted to send a message to the rest of the world that top class tech talent can be grown in Mississippi, exists in Mississippi as unrealized potential. We've made a good start on demonstrating that. We're just at the beginning, that the curve is just beginning to turn up. It's going to be a heck of a ride. If you'd like to, come join us and be part of it. Watch us, cheer us on. We do accept donations. But thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. I enjoyed the questions. I've enjoyed every time you give a talk like this, where you have to think through who the audience is, what you can tell them that might be useful to them. It's a learning experience for yourself. I regret only that I didn't have enough time to adapt this speech more precisely to this audience. A little bit of too much of the speech is what is given to VCs, so it was pitched to them. I tried to change that, but no. Basic thought: we could really be onto something in Mississippi, and it could materially change the way Mississippi works. And it's a number of things coming together. It's nationally in Tech Jackson. It's Vince Jordan, and it's some other people that are starting tech companies around here. It's what the mayor did to make Jackson tech ready. When we had to go into virtual streaming, we could do that because there was no digital desert in Jackson. Almost all coders we sent home had access to the internet. That's not true rurally. And by the way, this coding takes a lot of bandwidth. When we started in Jackson at the Eudora Welty Library, we used their entire capacity, internet capacity, for a day and a half just getting started. Actually, we found a way around it, but if we hadn't found a hack, we would have, nobody else at that library for 2 days would have had access to the internet because we would preempted it. So this is a community effort. These things don't happen by themselves. Companies don't get built by individuals. Communities, tech hubs don't get done by themselves. The power is in the network. The power is in the number of people that are doing it together. So if it were just CodeWorks and Mississippi Coding Academies, it'd be a pebble thrown into a pond. It's when it starts raining asteroids that you get something going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I can attest to everything that said about the Academy. Having gone through the evening course, going through a little bit of front end and mostly back end, coding can help you in just about any career, most likely. like you said, with critical thinking, problem solving, it's just a great skill to have. So if you see yourself being able to learn it, even if you don't, try it out. Maybe you'll find that you like it. I'm not sure how many of the day students kind of were a little bit pessimistic when they started, but found out that they loved it. Do you have any idea of students who started out not being so positive and ended up a really good coder?
Well, coding intimidates everybody. There isn't anybody that's been a coder that hasn't had one or many periods of self-doubt, but you can get past them. I thought Charlia Smith, who was in our day program, her she spontaneously posted on LinkedIn that she was really happy about the academy. And she's a little bit unique. We always have a few people in our classes that are college graduates or have a college degree. In some cases, one or two people have had community college IT or coding degrees. Charlia had a computer science degree from a four-year college from Tougaloo. And she said, when I graduated, I really didn't like coding, but then when I went to the coding academy, I found I loved coding again. And let me just say, we teach coding in a very non-academic way. Most four-year colleges that are turning out computer scientists teach things other than coding. I've said that asking a computer science professor to teach coding is like asking a literature college English professor to teach basic grammar to a college student. It's not something they want to do. So you don't really, most four-year programs are not set up to teach coding. Computer science is set up to teach computer science, which has so much more than coding that coding doesn't really get picked up. If you're going to be a computer science major, I'd strongly recommend you learn coding before you go to college. It'll make a computer science degree so much more easy to understand. But Charlia, had gone, so it's not a unique situation our coding, we teach coding by simulating working in a coding company, by simulating what they call the Scrum. So it's like work. It's a simulated work experience. For instance, when you learn front end, you learn the front end principles Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, until you know them. And then you move on to something else, like maybe database. And you work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, database until you got that done. Then you go on to the back end. Then you tie them all together with MVC and a capstone project. And that creates a very different learning environment than a four-year college. Some people, many different types of learners, people learn things different ways. You just pick the way that's right for learning it for you. But every one of our coders had moments of doubt. All of them overcame it. Many of the people that didn't overcome them, that dropped by the wayside, could have overcome them if they believed in themselves. We discovered in our program, I mean, if you think about where the kids start off and where they end up, they're going from being in minimum wage jobs, and that's kind of what their thinking is about their potential for many of them. They don't see the future they could have. Over 11 months with us, we try and open up a new future to them. They have to live it. They have to do the work. They have to have the self-confidence that 11 months of hard work will pay off. And it hasn't for most of them, their families, their peers. This is a situation where 11 months of hard work can pay off. But it's natural, if you come from a family of coders, you expect that you'll be able to code. If you come from a family of professional athletes, you expect that you can become a professional athlete. The odds may still be against you, but at least you start out believing it, and you're more likely to because you believe it. Plus, you've got some excellent coaching problem. Helping the kids get inside, their feelings and have self-confidence is something that's why we have people like Herb Brown and Javier Peraza and Bryce Mullican, because they've been there and made that course themselves, or they've got experience doing it. It is one reason I am never in the classroom, because I don't know how to do that. I actually was in the classroom for 1 hour in the first year, where my two instructors just had two things they had to do. There was going to be nobody to cover the classroom. They said, Rich, you're it. You got them for an hour. And they gave me about 10 minutes notice. And in that hour, I just talked to them about, what do you like about the academy? What don't you like about the academy? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What could we be doing different? And here's one of the ways the academy is different. They said, we want homework. We want computers we can take home. We don't like the book you're teaching Python out of. Here's a book we want to learn it from. So when my two instructors came back and I got finished chewing them out for putting them in an awkward position, we talked over those three changes. In 30 minutes, those changes were part of the program. That's one of the reasons we can do what we're doing, is because we have the freedom to operate that way. And so far it's worked. We've done the right things. Well, we've done some wrong things. The other thing you have to learn how to do when you're starting an organization and from ground zero, out of nothing, getting from 0 to 1, as they say, is you're going to make mistakes. You've got to admit it and fix it and find some way to get that thing done that's not a mistake. Just, it's critical that everybody on the team be trained that you're going to make mistakes. If you think you've made a mistake, put your hand up, say, I've got a problem, help. You'll get all the attention in our organization, get all the attention in the world to help fix that mistake or find another way to do it. And it's a better organization because of it. I will tell you this, most organizations with which you will work do not have an environment like that. And it's a lot more fun to work in our environment than it is in the other kind of environment.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you so much.
Sounds like there's a little bit of experience there.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much. It's always great to talk to you, and I'm so glad that the audience got to hear from you. Thank you for joining us at Tech Jackson. You're free to stick around. We're going to watch the tour of the future Tech District, but if you have to take off, we definitely understand that as well.
No, I want to watch that tour because I'd love to have the coding academy located there. So I'd like to see what our future might look like. Excellent. Our physical future, when we have a physical future again.
Right. Here we go. Sooner than later, hopefully. All yes. Right. We'll go ahead and cue that up.
Thank you.
Welcome to the home of the future Jackson Tech District. The Jackson Tech District is Dr. Nashley Cephas's vision for a Jackson Tech District. It is state-of-the-art and the first of its kind here in Jackson. As a native of Jackson, she wants to give back and keep the city moving forward. The Tech District is already in various phases of development. It is located at Gallatin and Admit, set in a prime location close to downtown and family neighborhoods. tech district will house lofts, makerspace, restaurants, storefronts, creative spaces for artists and young adults. The tech district is the future of Jackson. We will now take you for a behind-the-scenes look at what Dr. Cephas will be transforming. We will now go behind the scenes to see what Dr. Cephas is planning.
In the video as well.
Okay.
So welcome to the future home of the Jackson Tech District. This building that we're standing in right now is the old downtown storage building. It actually used to be a pharmacy called McKesson. Prior to that, I think this building was built in the 70s. And so this building is gonna become housing lofts as well as residential space. And so we'll have about 30 or 40 open 1 and 2 bedroom lofts upstairs. And then this downstairs area will be restaurants, other types of retail, and other amenities also for the residents. So you can, I'll take you on the tour. It's a lot of antique stuff in here. I sound like I'm showing stuff. So this is the old building. We'll go down here. The storage, you see a lot of storage units. And then I'll take you upstairs so you can see what the loft space will look like.
Okay. And will you gut the place, or will you use some of the structure that's already here?
So we'll do a mix.
Okay.
A lot of the areas in this building are old, so more than likely we'll be replacing it and gutting it. But again, some of this area, so for example, all of these storage units could possibly be used, you know, for office space and things like that. So, just show an example. So one of the beautiful things about this building is that it houses a lot of old antique materials. And so in here you'll see a lot of old antique items like pianos. Here's an old General Electric refrigerator. Back before, you know, we had nicer refrigerators. There's an old camera film reel that you can record with. Here's an example of an old cash register. Okay, so I'm sure there's a lot of history there. And so we'll just have to figure out, you know, how to creatively use a lot of this equipment. And then also try to find some of the owners of it if we can, give some of it back. But we've been doing it and we haven't had a lot of people come back to reclaim things. So we have so much we can utilize here. All right, so here's the fun part. All right, so so you can imagine we'll have a little bit of a rampway for people to drive in through here.
Okay.
And everything on this side will be retail, and everything on this side, all going all the way back to the building, will be amenities. So these are considered very high-tech apartments, and so you'll have access to conference rooms, podcast recording rooms, virtual webinar recording rooms. If you want to have everybody's doing virtual meetings, virtual classrooms now, so we can house it. You can have all that to your accessible to you. And so it's just a lot more space. You'll see the exposed brick over there, so we'll definitely keep that. There's just so much stuff in here that we have to get rid of, but it's just so much you can do with the wide open space.
Will you be having professionals do that, or will it be volunteer opportunities to help clean out the space?
Oh yes, we will take all the volunteer help we can get, and so I'm sure that we'll run some volunteer campaigns and other ways people can contribute.
Okay, great.
Watch your step. I don't know why they blocked my walkway here. Oh, this is a dry erase board. I need this.
The things you find.
I know. Yeah, I could definitely do that. All right. So then you just see a lot of random stuff. One of the law firms there's several law firms that used to store stuff in here, so there's a lot of legal documents from old cases. Some people have stuff in here that, for whatever reason, they just ended up leaving it. Some of the stuff hasn't been accessed in years, so we're about to go upstairs, and you'll see where the law space will be. That's an old freight elevator, so we can definitely do a lot with that. And these are some of the pod spaces I was telling you about. And you can easily turn into office space if you want to do that. So we're still trying to decide. All right, so I'll turn on my So we have, again, like more and more wide open office space. Quite a bit of extra restaurant equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll help us out a lot once we open up the different eateries. A lot of photographers actually like to come in here and shoot. It's kind of hard to see today, but you can actually see King Edward Hotel sign and the Standard Life building. It's cloudy today, but normally the sunlight is beaming straight through here. Like this table, I just love this table. But you come in here. And last thing I want to show.
This building is large.
It's huge. It's huge. And so you can imagine, it's actually quiet up here too, contrary to what you would think. And so you can imagine this would be somewhat like the hallway going straight down. And then you'll have, like a loft. Everybody gets a window. So this is one loft space from the time you walk in here all the way to the back of the wall from pole to pole. And so the architects, we figured we could fit about 30 or 40 of those lofts, depending on how much additional amenity space we want for residents. Like I mentioned, the conference rooms and the recording rooms and things like that, a gym, so we'll be able to keep it nice and separate and secure for the people who are in these high-tech apartments. And the people that we're targeting are actually the young adult graduate student age level. We did our market study and found out that Jackson is really a big college town. And so we want to be able to have young people who may not be able to afford the really high-end luxury apartments. We want to bring them still to the city and let them live in the city and participate in everything that the city has to offer and everything that the city will potentially offer. And so that's who we're targeting for this building.
Excellent.
And that's pretty much it for this building.
Okay.
The home of the Makerspace building, and so we're going to paint a mural on this wall so you can see the Jackson Tech District, and people can know that this is a part of the start of the entire district.
We head into the Makerspace.
The Lofts building and the storage building and the Makerspace building. And we're going to actually tear down these two buildings in later phases to build a family fun center in phase 3. Which will be later in 2021. This is the barn building. This will become the event venue space, and we can host. Actually, the Beans has actually hosted our 10-year anniversary here. You can actually drive around the whole back of the barn in this way and out that way. And so it makes a very COVID-safe environment. It's 17,000 square feet, so you can have a lot of events in here. And then this building will be a part of phase 2. We'll call it the Innovation Station. This is actually the old Jackson Paper Company building. And so we'll have office space, co-working space. We'll have conference and training centers, and also a few places to get something to eat. And just continuing on with the vibe of the rest of the Jackson Tech District.
How long have you been planning this?
About 2 years now. It started as just a thought, and it expanded. I didn't know it would take 18 months to close and actually acquire the property, but that gave me plenty of time to plan and strategize about how I want to carry on beyond the closing point. So,
Excellent.
Now we'll head into the bean barn.
So this is the event space.
yes.
Can definitely see the potential of this building, even without much work being done.
Right. For the Bean Path event, we just put some porta potties outside, and we showed a movie in here. We spread out the chairs, pretty spread out, and acoustics are great, as you can hear. You get a lot of natural lighting. We'll add more windows as well and make sure we insulate it. But like you said, even before we do that, people can come in here and have things like tech fairs, marketplaces, farmers markets. Imagine doing something like Mistletoe Marketplace in here, or even having startup competitions and coding camps and things like that. And so we're working on a lot of deals with some strategic partners. You'll be hearing about those pretty soon.
Any plans for back here? An outdoor space, perhaps?
Absolutely. So there used to be 3 grain silos out here. and they used to hold soybeans, and in there used to be the cotton gin, and so they used to call this barn the bean barn. And this was before we even started looking at it. So we were like, oh, this is the bean barn. We're the bean pad. This is meant to be. And so with those silos, we'll probably put fountains over there. We could beautify the area of flowers, planting some trees and get some a nice courtyard set up out here for events. So again, this is just like the city's backyard to play in.
Okay.
So this is actually the smaller barn building where we'll actually place a lounge or something like a brewery or somewhere you can go and hang out later at night. If you know techies, you know, we like to code late. We like to talk about our ideas. Sometimes they come up in the most unideal times, and it'd be great to just have a place to go hang out, maybe see some live music. And so this is the idea behind this place, which is in phase 2 of the development.
Okay.
I hope you all enjoyed that tour. I know I did. If you have any comments, you can drop them in the chat. We'll call you out. Dr. Cephas can be here with us tonight to answer questions, but we'd be happy to entertain a couple of things that we learned on the tour. And if not, we can end on this note. Rich, what did you think?
Let's see. Oh, okay, I'm not muted. Yeah, I was pretty impressed. I had no idea how large and varied the space was, how much open space there'd be. It sounds like it's going to be something that just can't help but attract people. You know, people that to have a tech space, it has to be fun, it has to be vibrant, it has to be youthful, it has to be quirky, but it also has to have a critical mass. It's not one building. The fact that this is a district is pretty impressive. I think the value of all the real estate around it just went up. You know, with it being a success, it'll grow. People will start building, and I'm sure she's hoping for this and expecting this and planning for it. And hopefully people around the area around the tech center will be developed.
Yes. I think that's exactly why she chose that location.
Yeah, I can't wait for it to be finished. And of course, we haven't had any detailed discussions about space and all that. It'll be hard when you're in a high growth mode where you got plans about what you want to be, what you could be, what you might be, that you can't really commit in advance for it. So you have to be dynamic and flexible, which makes it hard to make specific commitments. We know we want to be there. We just don't know how many seats we're going to have. We'd like it to be a lot more than we hope when we're currently planning for.
Right. Absolutely. I think that Arts and Innovation Station looks like that'd be perfect for y'all's home.
Yes, I think it would be. But you know, it's interesting. Coders can be pretty flexible about the space that they operate from. You know, a lot of times we'll see. Yeah, a lot of times you plan for something and then something else happens, and you know, just serendipitously it turns out to be different and better. I mean, the space we're in now used to be a printing plant shop.
Yes.
repurposed.
A lot of repurposing going on. Just astounding to see that vision. I can't wait. All right. Well, this concludes our evening. I'm so glad that y'all enjoyed the night. And hopefully you'll come back tomorrow to join us for Education Day. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you all. Thank you,
For
Jessica,
behind
for
the
putting it
scenes.
together.
Thank you. We appreciate that. It's a joy to bring it to the city. All right. Have a good night.
Night all.